Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And high tempo, we're going to kind of do the show backwards. High tempo, I'm just going to get into it with college football. Going to do the extended show basically for free, all the live streaming stuff. So if you want to get into the longer show, you can go to patreon.com and subscribe to Southbound Sports, hear it there. Also going to do some extra videos this week. Just because we have World Cup, United States advancing, which we're going to talk about. We have Michigan getting back into the Big Ten championship game and most likely the playoffs. So we have those extra shows coming this weekend just so I can get it out more timely. So I'm not going to do as many video things this week, but let's get rolling here with Michigan. Michigan goes into Columbus for the first time in forever, it feels like, and just dominates Ohio State once again. And I hear people talking about how, oh, it's a fluke. Oh, if they played again, it wouldn't happen. Like, look, buddy, it happened again. Ohio State said the same exact thing last year. Oh, it was at the big house, so they got a bump from home team, home field advantage. Oh, it was snowing. Our guys don't really do good in the snow. Oh, we had the flu. It was like every time you heard about excuses. This year, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, buddy, they might be more talented, but if they're not coached well, they're not the better team. And even the models, like we're going to get into it a little bit later here, but some of the computer models still have Ohio State so high that the Michigan win, I'm surprised it didn't bump them to number one in the college football playoff poll, but I think they did that because last year they wanted to avoid the rematch with Georgia and Alabama in the first round. I think they want to do the same thing this year. And I don't know how Ohio State makes the playoffs now because that was a thorough beating. I put the box score up here where you can see in the third and fourth quarter, Michigan outscored Ohio State 28-3 in the second half. 28-3 in the second half. I also have some stats comparing this game this year to last year. So last year, Michigan outscored them in the second half 28-14. It got worse. Last year, Michigan outrushed Ohio State 188-5 in the second half. This year, it was 242-19. So you can't say, oh, that was a fluke. If they played again, Ohio State would definitely crush them. Where you're seeing a trend here, whatever Ohio State's doing, it doesn't matter. They talked about Jim Knowles, how he's going to come in, bring a defense. They're going to stop the run. You stop the run, you beat Michigan. You heard it all year. Not really. And they didn't even stop the run. Like I said, in the second half, they were just cover zero, which is insane to me. It was like they brought in their own version of Don Brown. And they could have got Don Brown for cheaper. Because if you want to do that, go for it. Get a guy that can come in and put pressure on Michigan. But you're Ohio State. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? I don't get it at all. What were your thoughts after that game?
There were a couple plays where Ohio State they weren't aligning correctly to formations. Like there was a time where the tight end was on the left side for Michigan. And so they had four gaps to defend, and they had a guy out, like head up to outside the tight end, and they had like a nose guard. So it was like literally the entire middle of the formation was open. And I remember watching it at my buddy's house and was like, they're about to get gashed right now because there's no way you leave like three open gaps and not just run the ball right down their throat. And it was just like two or three big runs back to back to back. And I think going zero, if you have the athletes to do it, isn't a bad idea. And forcing Michigan to throw isn't a bad idea, but you can't do that at the expense of being poorly gap sound in the run. And that's exactly what ended up happening. They weren't aligning correctly, and Michigan made them pay. And I think as the game got tighter, or they started to pull away a little bit more in the fourth, I think you started to see some of the vulnerabilities in Stroud. That he's not. I don't see him being that guy that's going to go on to the NFL and move the needle. I mean, I know there are people projecting him to be the first quarterback taken, and being neck and neck with Bryce Young and, what have you. I don't see the consistency for him to be able to take that next step. And, when you look at the plays that they needed to be made, I think it's consistent. I don't know as much, is it the defense fault or is it the offense not being able to consistently move the ball?
For who? Michigan or Ohio State?
For Ohio State.
They move the ball. I told you, I'm glad you brought up Stroud. I'll get to that in a second. But I told you that their offense, I don't understand it. I don't understand the hype around it. It's all built on just their athletes beating guys that are not as talented as them. They just dink and dunk the ball the entire time. I said it when Don Brown was Michigan's defensive coordinator. Well, I think it was the first year where Brian Day was the head coach, where they came in and just kept running like the slant route or the crossing pattern, and they beat them. They scored like 60-something points, and that's where the Ryan Day's thing came from. Was like, oh, we're gonna can't wait to drop 100 on them or whatever he said. That kind of made Michigan reevaluate what they're doing. And I said, why don't you just go hire Phil Parker from Iowa and just do a bend but don't break? If you do a bend but don't break and stop giving them 10, 20 yards or whatever across the middle, just letting guys run wide open, you're going to beat them. And that's what you saw the past 2 years. Stroud threw 48 times. That's insane. And I said it, Ohio State, I thought I had the time of possession, but I don't on here. Ohio State won the time of possession because they were able to sustain drives. They were just moving the ball. They're running all these plays, but you're getting 4 or 5 yard chunks. And even Michigan's defensive coordinator, he said, hey, our goal was to just do 4-point plays where we let them tire themselves out, drive down the field, and we hold them to a field goal. And then that's a 4-point play for us because then we're going to come back and get a touchdown, and then we're going to outscore them. And in the second half, they didn't even get the field goal.
But see, the crazy thing is that Ohio State's running back was averaging almost 6 yards a carry.
I know,
and he only carried 14 times. It was like, don't do the thing that's going to make you successful. And having the lead at halftime, it should have just been, hey, just keep running the ball.
At the end of that half, if you showed someone the end of the first half where Ohio State scored the touchdown and Michigan comes out and gets like a bunch of penalties and like just ends up doing nothing and punting the ball, and you said, hey, who do you think's going to win the game? Ohio State has the lead 20 to whatever it was, 16. No one would say, oh, Michigan's going to win that game. There's no one. They would have been like, well, Michigan looks like they're a mess. Can't even get the play in on the 2-minute drill. This is a disaster. And then, nope, come out in the second half, and Ohio State, like you said, they weren't executing. They tried to go for it on fourth down in the first quarter. I think it was the first quarter, and they didn't get it. And they were on the 30-yard line, and I thought they were pressing early, which kind of gave me hope because I was like, if Ohio State starts to press, that means that they're not comfortable with this game. They didn't play like they were going to win. They were doing like weird decisions where Ryan Day tried to run a fake punt, and then someone said that maybe they did the false start on the punt to help set up the fake punt, which to me is like 4D chess. Like, what are you thinking? Why would you want to do a penalty on yourself to make your fourth down conversion even harder? Like, if you're going to run the fake punt, you're going to run it the first time. You're not going to get a penalty on yourself and then run the fake punt. Like, that's insane. And unless they were actually thinking that, which, like I said, that's insane. Why would you go, hey, 4th and 4, we're going to run a fake punt, but first, let's go ahead and jump offside so that they really don't expect it. And then we'll run it. So it's 4th and 9.
But you know what? The way that it looked was that if they actually did snap it to that up guy, there was nobody around. Like,
yeah, it would have been a good call. And Harbaugh said that they were expecting it.
19 yards, 29 yards, he would have had it. So, I mean, it wasn't terrible. It just snapped it straight to the punter, and even the punter was like, oh, crap.
And then they almost blocked it. That's why I don't know how many yards he would have came, because they did have a guy unblocked that would have been able to possibly run him down from behind. It just depends on, like, would he have run him down? I don't know, because, like, I don't remember who's out there blocking kicks. But it would have probably got the first down, I think. And then from there, you don't know. But they were already a mess. How do you know that guy gets it and doesn't run right into the back of his own guy and falls 5 yards short? I wouldn't have been surprised by that. I wasn't surprised that one of their guys went out of bounds and headbutted the Michigan. It was the Ohio State, one of their offensive guys. And when I saw that, it reminded me of like, was it 97 when David Boston grabbed like Charles Woodson's helmet and was like pulling it because he was so frustrated. At that point, I knew Michigan won this game. Like they're in their heads. Ohio State can't do anything. Their guys are the jittery ones. When at halftime, it was like, oh, Michigan's starting to crumble under like on the road. And they didn't. They came out, they got refocused, and they put it together. And that's why, like, even the probability, I'm surprised here, once Michigan scored that first touchdown, ESPN Sting was so in favor of Ohio State. They knew at that point, like, Ohio State, once they punted, it was over. Which is, I think is weird because I've never seen a computer do that. Typically, it tries to stay with the favorite the entire time, I think. And then, what was the other thing that struck out to me? When they settled for the field goal, they tried to make it a one-score game, which would become like an 8-point game or whatever at that point. And I thought, okay, I understand it, but your team looks like you're struggling. And you're moving the ball. Just get the first down and try to do, because like when Michigan was down there, they kind of went for it. And I think there was that one penalty, which I would have liked to see Ohio State not do the penalty in the end zone to the high pass to Ronnie Bell, because he got a hand on it, or like at least a couple fingers. And when that guy pushed him early, I wanted to see if he could just make that catch, because I thought that was a dumb penalty too. Like if you're the defender, you see the guy jump in the air, why would you take his legs out before? Like, why not just let him go? Because what's the odds of him catching it? Or do what Michigan's guy did on Ohio State's touchdown. That one pass to their tight end, I think. Clear touchdown. And our guy just went and knocked the ball out of his hands, which was the final straw. Because, like, that was the play that, hey, we're going to score a touchdown. We're back into it. And I don't even think that was the guy he was covering. And the crazy thing is, Matt Sanderstill, our nickelback or whatever, this is the first year he's played defense. He was a wide receiver last year, and I think in the pregame highlights, they showed him making a big catch last year, which is insane. How do you go from playing defense 1 year and being awesome like that? It's just crazy to me. Like, I think some of the development stuff that Michigan has going right now is what's the difference between it. And I look back, like, some of the stars, like Zach Harrison, Ohio State's big defensive end, he knocked a lot of passes down, had a lot of pressure. But to me, like the biggest highlight for him, at least for the NFL, is he was the only one that I saw trying to run down Donovan Edwards on one of those long touchdown runs. And I thought, I don't think a lot of people realize that the guy that's trying to catch him is their defensive end. It almost was like the rest of the team had kind of just quit at that point. Like, yep, we got it close to touchdown, and now you just ran for a long touchdown. And no one else is even going to try to get him. And again, why are you in cover zero? Like, you know Michigan's going to run the ball. What are you doing? Why not have a safety? Like the one play early in the game, Ohio State had the lead, and Michigan's guy caught that like comeback. If you watch the other side of that formation, Michigan's guy runs a double move and is wide open. I just think McCarthy saw that he had the first down, and if Ohio State would have sat and covered that, Michigan would have had a touchdown anyway, because that other guy, his second read, was so wide open. It was unbelievable. I saw that he did like a little video of the play because he had someone filming himself for like a vlog he was doing. And he's like, has his hand up, he's jumping, which is insane because they had his man covering him at the line of scrimmage. The first move he does makes that guy fall. But the safety that's over the top is down maybe like 8 yards. Like it's pretty close. So when that first guy falls, the other guy sees him, but instead he still goes out to the flat. So it was almost like they were doing this, having the safeties come and cover the flat because he was underneath on that comeback too. But Michigan ran it so deep that once he beat the cornerback, that was it. I mean, I think the other guy had come back. The other safety had tried to get him, and he just like hit his leg or something. He like high stepped him. So some of the defensive things, it honestly reminded me of Don Brown. And I know you're a big Don Brown guy, but it was like, don't do all or nothing. Like, can you just do a normal like zone mix in? It was almost like, nope, too stubborn. Don't care if they're scoring 40 points or whatever. And the post game from Day and him, like they just had their heads down. And I tried to watch it, and it was almost like they had no answer, which is surprising. And not what you want to see if you're the Big Ten. Did you see the Big Ten commissioner come out after that? he was like, that game is an all-time classic. Both those teams should be in the playoffs. I'm like, buddy, a 22-point win. If they put that on ESPN Classic, would any casual non-Michigan fan want to watch that? They would consider that a blowout, I think. Right? I don't see how you would be like, hey, oh, awesome. I remember this game coming down to the third quarter when Michigan ran for a 7-minute drive or whatever they ended up doing. If Michigan didn't have that long drive from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, Ohio State would have had like 10 minutes of extra time of possession. And they still couldn't do anything. I just don't get it. I do feel bad for Blake Corum, because if he would have played and had the 2 touchdown runs that Edwards had, he probably would have won the Heisman. And they did try to have him go, and I don't know what's up with them. They said he might need to get scar tissue scoped out or something. Like the helmet to the kneecap, man, still jars me, but he was able to jog. It was just when he cut, he like didn't have the thing. So I almost wonder if it was like a meniscus thing. They didn't really say what his issue is, but they said that if he plays on it, it's not going to do any more damage. So they tried to give him a go. The other big guy, Big Ten Player of the Year on defense, Michigan's Mike Morris. He was supposed to be a game time decision. I think they tried to have him play too, and he didn't really come back in the game. So you have your best 2 players on offense, and according to the Big Ten, you have the best player on defense in the conference out. I wouldn't have predicted Michigan winning that bad. I would have said, oh. And then Donovan Edwards, to top it off, had a broken hand. I think that's what screwed Michigan last week against Illinois, or the week before at this point, where he wasn't even dressed in the Illinois game because he had broke his hand again, I think in the Nebraska game the week before. So when Corum went out, Michigan's offense just turtled last week, because like you're built on running the ball. Your top 2 running backs are out, and now he comes back in 1 week with a cast on his arm. They pointed it out multiple times in like the commentator. He won't even touch the ball with his right hand. And all I thought was, oh, great, he's going to fumble. Right? Why is he in there? Like, they threw the ball to him on a pass and he caught it. And I was like, oh, God, he's going to fumble. Like, he's never going to be able to tuck the ball. Maybe he's left-handed. I don't know. He threw a pass last year in the Big Ten championship game for a touchdown. And I was going to look it up before the show to see if he is actually left-handed. But his right hand is the broken one. And he had that soft cast on it. They said he could kind of move his fingers, but it was big enough where if you have a broken hand, you're trying to touch the ball. So now I wonder, like, going against Purdue, which we'll get into here in a little bit, like, is that going to be a factor? Because Corum, he might not be able to go. Edwards, I'm guessing he'll go. He just played against Ohio State. Like, why wouldn't you? But hopefully both those guys and Morris can get healed up going into the playoffs pretty much. But I thought, hell of a game. If you're Ohio State, I don't know what you do next year. I honestly think they should do the same advice I gave Michigan. Hire Phil Parker from Iowa. If Ohio State had Iowa's defense and their offense, even the dink and dunk, like, okay, whatever. Why don't you run some 4 verticals? Did you hear the one commentator? I don't know if it was Klatt or Gus Johnson, but Michigan ran a play where like they ran like a 4 vert, and I think they completed it for like 15 yards or something. And they were like, "That's insane! Everyone ran deep. Well, what would have happened if he didn't have time?" I'm like, "You would probably got sacked, buddy. You've never heard of 4 verts?" Like, that's what Ohio State should be doing, right? They have these NFL wide receivers. I told you, they don't ever attack the middle of the field. So they're isolating their guys on the edge, and they're giving the defender another defender basically with the boundary. They threw deep to Marvin Harrison that one time. They made a big deal about him never dropping a pass, and he ran a slant, and he dropped the ball, and they kind of never went back to it. I don't know if they're afraid of like, hey, we can never run him across the middle. He's not used to it. But when he made that drop, they never went back to it. And he had separation. He probably would have caught that and had a first down. And then they never really threw deep to him again either, I remember. I know they had, and honestly, the touchdown was Michigan's only mistake on defense, I remember. They did a safety blitz, which led to that touchdown, which at that point, they're on your side of the field. Why are you doing a safety blitz? But that's just nitpicking at this point, man. I thought it was a hell of a game. And I told you Michigan looks better this year than last year. If I had to pick, I think last year you could kind of be like, oh, they're probably not going to have a chance really in the playoffs. This year, I think they have a chance. They've beaten everybody. Three teams going into last weekend had margins of victory of over 20 points a game. Georgia was number 1. I forget what the exact number was. Ohio State was number 2. Michigan was number 3. All three of them had 20-point average margin of victories on average over all their opponents. Of course, Ohio State probably dropped out of it with a negative 20. Maybe they didn't, who knows, but I'd guess that Michigan's number 2 now. And that might be what's keeping Ohio State in the conversation, because I didn't realize up to this point that they had won every game by double digits, which is something that I have said that Michigan has been doing, which is kind of insane, until like the Illinois game, or I guess the Maryland game ended up being a touchdown. If they didn't let that late touchdown, they would have been every game by double digits like Ohio State. I don't know if that means the Big Ten sucks, or are they really that good? We don't know. So we'll wait and find out. Let's go ahead and look at the playoffs, because I know I was looking at just the ACC. Before we get into this, I told you, man, the way the ACC and the SEC are set up, when the SEC wins that challenge week, USC beats Clemson and Georgia Tech loses to Georgia, right? And the other matchups, Florida and Florida State. Even though Florida State beats Florida, it doesn't mean anything because USC knocked Clemson out of the playoff discussion. If Clemson were to win last week, they would have been in the discussion ahead of Ohio State. Ohio State would have had 2 chances not to make it, right? Which made it a little bit iffy for me watching both games at the same time, because I'm like, on one hand, this Clemson game is going way faster than the Michigan game because the Clemson's just running the ball. And I'm like, I don't know if I need Clemson to win or lose yet. Because if I want Michigan to make the playoffs, if they lose to Ohio State, I needed Clemson to lose. And then,
but you got to backtrack a sec, because with Michigan and Ohio State both being in the top 4, I don't know that a loss should drop either one completely out of the discussion. Like, I feel like you've played the majority of the season winning the way that you have.
Let's hold that thought. Let's bring it up so we can put this in our thing. So they announced the new playoff ranking. Okay. We have Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, TCU number 3, USC number 4, and Ohio State fell to 5. So go ahead, Matt.
And that's exactly where I felt like they needed to be placed at. And I had saw some early reports of where they potentially thought they would fall to. And I was ready to go out of my mind with the Alabama and Tennessee moves being as high up as what they were, because it's like the losses, you're looking at like Ohio State just losing this week, like they shouldn't be penalized like as much. You know, I would say the same thing if it was Michigan that lost that. Like, if you're a top 4 team and you lose a top 4 matchup, you don't necessarily fall out of the picture. And I think that's they put them in a good place so that if TCU or USC falls out, it sets it up for Ohio State to get in.
Well, I'll do you one extra here. TCU is not getting left out. I think a lot of the talk here is just for clicks. And I think they're very simple here with the playoff ranking. You're right. If Michigan would have been the one to lose, they would have fallen to 5. The only team that would have been able to jump up and really take them out would have been Clemson, because Clemson would have also only had 1 loss. I think this week we would have seen Ohio State or Clemson right there at 5 and 6. It wouldn't have mattered. They both would have had 1 loss. I think with the championship game, then you have a chance to get that 12th win. Ohio State doesn't have that chance now.
When South Carolina played Clemson, was South Carolina ranked?
I don't think so, but they also had knocked off Tennessee, so they might have been.
I wasn't sure if they were or not, but this is my thoughts were, and I said this last week, you're a South Carolina team that's either ranked low in the top 25 or you're not even ranked at all and you beat Clemson, Clemson should just about fall out of the rankings. Like, that's how it works, right?
Well, not so fast, man, because NC State, my boys, beat North Carolina and somehow still ranked below them. They beat them at home.
Yeah.
They only kept them high so that Clemson's high, or so that it's high enough that North Carolina can jump up. So if they win the ACC and they make the Orange Bowl by automatic bid, actually, would they even make it, right? Or I guess Notre Dame lost, so they're so far back, I guess it would be UNC. Because there was a chance where if Notre Dame had beat USC last week, they get the ACC New Year's Six bid, right? South Carolina knocks Clemson out. North Carolina loses to NC State. If North Carolina were to beat Clemson, Notre Dame could still have been ranked higher. They would have got the bowl bid. But I think they have to be in the top 12. Now they fell to 21. I forgot they got killed by USC, so it doesn't really matter. But to your point, yeah, South Carolina beats Tennessee. How are they not behind Penn State? Because right now, I mean, honestly, Michigan should be number one if you're looking at the rankings. I'm great with Georgia being there just based on last year. You're the reigning champs. You should be number one until you lose. That's my feeling on it. That's how I've always felt. I don't care if you lose a bunch of players. Like when Clemson was number one and then they won the championship and then they were behind like Alabama or whatever. I always felt like that shouldn't be the case. I don't care who Clemson lost. If you're the national champ and you have a solid team coming back, just make them number one till they lose. If they're not deserving of number one, they will lose. Georgia hasn't lost. Stay at number one. Even though Michigan has the better resume with wins, dominating wins over number 5 Ohio State and number 8 Penn State. Remember, those are both 20-point wins, I think. 20-point plus. So Georgia doesn't have those wins. Alabama and Tennessee don't have those wins. Tennessee has gotten blown out by a South Carolina team that has 4 losses. If you say Penn State, they got blown out by Michigan, Tennessee's blowout is worse. There's no reason Tennessee should be ahead of Penn State. There's none. Penn State should be up there. You could even argue that Penn State should be ahead of Alabama. Great. They didn't win as much. Penn State killed Auburn just as bad as Alabama did. What has Alabama done differently in the games that they're compared against? Like I'm saying this right now. If Penn State makes a bowl game right now, I think they were slated against Clemson or something, they will probably kill them. I think Penn State is that good. And just because, hey, it sucks you're in a division with Ohio State and Michigan, now you're screwed. Where for the SEC, for some reason, it doesn't matter. And prove me wrong. Remember when Penn State, everyone thought they were garbage, and then they had that classic game against USC in the Rose Bowl, where it was like a shootout. They scored all those touchdowns with Saquon Barkley. I wouldn't look past Penn State at all. And I honestly think Penn State just got one of their big-time linemen back for next year, he announced. They could be the favorites in the Big Ten next year. Right? You bring the guys back. Hey, I think it would obviously be them or Michigan. I don't know how you could just keep predicting Ohio State if they haven't won it in 2 years. But that's my thing. I'm with you. I also don't think the Big 12 should be penalized because, Kansas State's 10 right now, right? Then they went ahead and put Texas at 20, and they just kind of shoved the rest of their teams out. But they have the same problem as the Big 10. They play 9 conference games, right? Before, a lot of those teams were ranked until TCU beat them. Now they're losing those ranked matchups. Again, Ohio State also doesn't have any ranked matchups. What ranked win does Ohio State have other than Penn State, right? I don't think any other Big Ten teams are in this ranking. Am I wrong? I don't know if I'm missing someone.
No.
So if TCU beats, or even if they lose to Kansas State, their loss is going to be to a top 10 team, just like Ohio State. They're going to continue to have 2 ranked wins because they've already beaten Kansas State once. So that's why I think they're locked in no matter what. I think the media is pushing this narrative that Alabama and Ohio State could possibly jump TCU. There's no way Alabama gets in. There's none. They're done. They've been done for weeks. The only people that keep talking about it are ESPN guys. Everyone knows they're not going to put a 2-loss, non-division winner, non-conference winner in the playoffs. They're just not. over a TCU team that was undefeated in the regular season.
But if TCU loses and Southern Cal loses, it opens the door to bring Ohio State and Alabama back in.
Oh, I don't think Bama gets in. I told you I think TCU's locked in. I think what happens, I think the top three are set. Unless Georgia loses, or hell, if Michigan loses, if any of them lose, it's just going to affect seeding. I think Georgia's number one. If they lose, then it could get interesting because if TCU wins, like what happens if Ohio State sneaks in, right? With USC so now, like what are you going to do? Are they going to try to avoid the rematch? Because you can't put Michigan at number one and Ohio State at 4.
So let me ask you this: you look at, and I'll expand it to the top 11 since it's all the teams in the left column there. Of those top 11, which team would you not want to play in the playoffs?
Not want to play?
Yeah.
Right now, Georgia again, baby. Make that a national championship game. I wouldn't want to see Georgia in the first round.
Because other than Georgia, that I think is still pretty well loaded, I think the other team that you really don't want to face is Alabama, and it's just because they've consistently shown that they have the talent to win. And given the extra time to prepare, there's a reason that they're pushing Florida State's consecutive finishes in like the top 5 and top 10. Like they're pushing that close to that record. Like there's a reason that they're there. That's
why I think if they would put them in, you can't just pick a team though because like they lost to Tennessee, they've lost to LSU, and everyone says, well, those are close losses. They had so many other close games. Like I said, Michigan and Georgia have won almost every game by 20. Like Alabama should have lost to Texas. Texas's best quarterback went out. If I'm the committee, I kind of have that as a loss in my book, if I'm being honest.
But you look at it, they lost to number 20, they lost to number 14, they lost to number 7. Like, you can easily rationalize they're losing to top 25 teams.
Yeah, but who are they beating?
Fair enough.
Because that's my other comparison. Like, is their only win in this ranking Mississippi State at 24? I think it is, right? They should not be ahead of Tennessee. They lost to them. I don't care how good you think Bryce Young is. I know he won the Heisman last year, didn't he? I don't care. Like, what have you done that is on your resume? If you're handing in a resume and it's blind, take Alabama off it. No one in their right mind has them at 6. Sure, they lost, or no, did they beat? No, they beat Texas. They have 2. They have 20 and 24, right? I don't think they played any of the other ranked SEC teams.
Yeah.
But still, 2 in the bottom, and then you have 2 losses. Like, all right, Penn State doesn't have any ranked losses or ranked wins, so maybe that counts against it. But Alabama should be nowhere ahead of Tennessee. None. Tennessee beat Bama, and Tennessee also lost to Georgia. Like, that's one of their losses, and they lost to another ranked team. So even in terms of like ranked losses, you lost to number 1 and 19 according to this. And they killed LSU. Like, Tennessee destroyed LSU. It was like, what, 40-something to whatever? I'm going to see if I can find the actual score. I want to say it was, what did they do? It was 40-13. That's worse than how Michigan beat Ohio State. Like, that, there's no reason why Alabama should be ahead of Tennessee other than, I don't know why. I honestly don't. And they don't have another chance to get a win, so I don't think it matters. Like, I think they look at who has 12 wins. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, they're in. USC has a chance to get 12 wins. If they do it, awesome, they're in. If they lose, I think you have a debate. Both of their losses would be to, number 11, Utah? Because they play them twice, which is another thing, too. If they redeem themselves, I think they are locked in at 4. Like, honestly, even if TCU loses, would I have USC jump them? I don't know. I just don't think TCU. I mean, I guess you could say, well, they're compared. USC gets the conference champ. They jump them. Case closed, and that would work out fine for me, I think. But it also comes down then to how about the Georgia and Michigan's performances? If Michigan kills Purdue and Georgia struggles with LSU, does Michigan jump to number 1 then too? That's something that could happen. And I think that might happen if USC beats or whatever and kicks out Ohio State. I think the only reason Michigan wouldn't have a chance to jump is if Ohio State sneaks in at 4. I don't think they want to rematch until the championship game, which to me would be insane if that would happen and bring massive ratings. I did have one other point to this, though, real quick, Matt, before I get into championship week. How bad are the ESPN computers? They still have Ohio State with an 88% chance to make the playoffs. They're ranked number 5. They have no chance for another win. TCU has whatever chance of they're 83. They're probably in, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
They have Alabama ahead of USC, who is ranked number 4 right now.
Because they're probably thinking USC is going to choke in the championship game.
But when has Lincoln Riley really choked like that? I think USC, to me, is just, if you swap the logos, they're basically Oklahoma at this point. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely say that.
They're using all transfer guys. That's the bulk of their team. Would I be, like you had talked about, which teams are you afraid to play if you're Michigan? Like, I honestly, Georgia number 1, and then, like you said, if Alabama would sneak in, honestly, TCU and USC, to me, it really wouldn't be a difference. Like, how is USC's passing attack better than Ohio State's? Like, maybe not. Did their guy extend plays better? Yes. Is he going to win the Heisman? Most likely. If USC loses, who do they give the Heisman to? Right? Corum got hurt. Hooker got hurt. So they are both played 2 games less than everybody. They were the other leaders at that point. Williams has to get it, right? Just because. If he comes out and has a stinker of a game, throws 3 interceptions, Blake Corum can't play for Michigan, do they just pick a Georgia guy? Or actually, I'd give it to TCU's quarterback, to be honest. But that's just me. If they win, which would be I think that would be an awesome move. But we'll know ahead of time. USC plays on Friday.
And I haven't seen enough of TCU, to be honest, like to make a fair assessment of where they stand in this. Like they've definitely won the games, obviously, to be ranked in the top 4. But are there? I almost see them in the same way that I looked at Oklahoma State last year. Like they're in the discussion, but are they actually going to finish it off and get themselves into the playoffs?
Matt, Ohio State had a hell of a defensive coordinator that anyone would want, and that would easily make your team a championship team. So what are you saying here? TC doesn't have that.
And with them not having that, like I think that's why they're putting Ohio State there, because I think the rankings are saying, is there a possibility that TCU and USC lose this week? Yes. If one of them loses, there's your justification for putting Ohio State in, being that they've been top 4 all year long. Like it's almost like when Alabama lost late in the one year, like they ended up getting back in late after Saban griped about, you don't want this team in the playoffs, and then they backed in and ended up winning it.
Yeah, well, that could be the case. He would have to gripe, but like I said, 2 losses, it's going to be hard. I don't understand if they do put them in, how they wouldn't get a lawsuit from like the Big 12, because they're supposed to be non-biased. I understand that you can say like, hey, we're marketing this as a Power 5. TCU's in a Power 5. They're in. They have 12 wins. Bama has what, 10? They're out. TCU's 2 better, Matt. 2 better. Even if they have that loss, they already have 12 wins. And that's why I don't understand the computers. It's USC that they're worried about. Now, if they're saying that a USC loss makes Notre Dame look bad, which also makes Ohio State's win over Notre Dame look bad, then maybe Bama can jump them. But I think it would be weird to have a Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Bama playoff. I just think it will be Ohio State at that 4th spot. which is what this computer's showing. I just don't like, unless they think TCU has an 83% chance to win their game. And even then, it's like the other teams can't do anything to improve their stock. Ohio State just got boat raced by 22 points. That's the last memory anyone has of Ohio State. I don't think the boardroom can say, well, they're really playing great football right now. Hell, put them in. Let's see what they can do. It's like, oh yeah, we already saw what they can do. We saw what they could do against Northwestern. They really had a bunch of red flags, and no one said anything about it until it was too late. So, Bama, maybe. They have the same issues too. I know Bryce Young went out for a bit, so maybe Saban can play that card, but I think they lost with him in the game against TCU or Tennessee. He played against Tennessee. Put Tennessee in. I'd rather see Tennessee. I did have a list here, as we talk about it, of the actual expanded playoff that it would be right now. And this is based on the computer metrics, so it's going to be a little bit different than what the actual rankings are. But they're saying the way it would shake out is Georgia would be number one, and they would play the winner of the first round game between Penn State and Washington, which would be awesome to have a home game in Penn State, as they would be the higher seed, against Washington to play Georgia. The second slot would be USC. They'd play the winner against Ohio State or Tulane. Tulane would be the 12th seed. Ohio State at 5 would get them. Then Michigan would be 2. They'd play the winner of Tennessee and Clemson, assuming Clemson wins the ACC, which I think would be a great matchup. The two orange, imagine the eye bleed of that bracket, Matt. 2 orange teams playing, and then the orange team, especially if it's Tennessee winning, against Michigan's Mays in 100 whatever size stadium, 100,000. Insane. And then the third one would be TCU playing the winner of Bama and Kansas State. They have TCU beating Kansas State and Kansas State hanging on to get that last spot. I think that would be a great playoff. I don't like the bye teams, though, not playing at home. I think that's the one thing that the committee is getting wrong when they talk about this. Tennessee playing at home against Tennessee or against Clemson should not be rewarded with a potential matchup with Michigan in Georgia, right, in the second round. They should have to come to the big house and play a game. And then do the bowl games after. Once you get to a Final Four, I think that should be when the bowl games start. Not this expanded round that they've been talking about. So I hope that's the one thing that they change. Because right now you win the conference. Michigan wins the conference, wins the Big Ten. They get to watch Ohio State have a home game. Great for recruiting, right? It's a playoff game. Maybe they don't do recruiting at this new playoffs. We don't know yet. But then they get to play USC and who knows where. They could be playing USC in Orlando. Even though USC was the 4th seed, I think they would get the last pick. So you're not going to get anywhere home. It's not like they're going to let Michigan pick Detroit. Maybe they will. I don't know. I would like to see that. Like, hey, Tennessee, you're coming to the Motor City Bowl, baby. Or like, what if Penn State made it? What was that New York Yankees one? And they picked the Yankee Stadium to see like Georgia come up to. Even though Georgia's number 1, so they'd probably just pick Georgia, Atlanta, or whatever. So that's my last thing. I like the expanded playoff, but why reward some of these teams like Bama, according to this list, Bama, Tennessee, Clemson? Like, you're not winning big enough, but you could potentially have a home game and then get a favorable bowl spot because all the bowl games are in the South. You're not going to be pressured to go up north. And I think that's what the Big Ten should be pressuring for. If they want to fix some of these prediction things, make the Southern teams play up north and then prove that they can win there. Championship week's coming up, though. Oops, I had some spot picked out for you to talk about Florida State and the ACC going forward. I said Florida State could have a chance to make the top 10 based on this championship week. I told you. Clemson's playing UNC. If UNC wins, is that enough to have them jump from like 20-something ahead of Florida State? I don't think so. Utah's playing. TCU or USC. I think they lose. Florida State jumps them. What was the other game? I just said it. TCU plays Kansas State. They beat them again. I think Florida State jumps them, right? They're 14th. That gets them all the way up to, what, a 10 or 11? And I think there was one other one in there, too. Not Michigan and Purdue. I guess it would have been Georgia and LSU, probably. Probably Georgia beats them. Florida State should jump them. And you're looking at a top 10 Florida State. What do you think?
I mean, I thought that they could be and should be deserving of top 10. But I mean, the 3 losses hurt. And when you look, at the time, you had a banged up Jordan Travis, you had a banged up Benson. There were a lot of players on the defensive side that were banged up and missed significant time during that stretch that they lost. But I've just been overall satisfied with the way that they've been playing. Like, I feel like they've been as consistent as they've ever been. Looking at the Florida game, I mean, I thought that Florida moved the ball more than I would have liked. I was hoping just to see a quick curb stomping, but you can never tell with those rivalry games how that's going to play out because you have a lot of competition and a lot of those guys are playing each other in high school and a lot of emotion with it. So to come out on top of a rivalry game like that was a good thing. Just looking at the way that the offense is performing, it really makes me happy that they're heading in the right track. I know you were joking about happy with Norvell. I was happy with what I saw his production from Memphis. Like, I was disappointed in the condition of the program Jimbo Fisher left it, and then the lack of organization from when Taggart was there. I mean, it's a night and day difference from the tail end of Jimbo through Taggart into Norvell that the details are there. Like, you're seeing the performance and you're getting multiple guys there. And I think where it's really hitting home is they're taking advantage of picking the right people out of the transfer portal. And that was one of the things that we talked about early is, if this was 10, 15 years ago, you're stuck in this nasty sinkhole because you can only do stuff based off of the recruits that you're getting. Well, now it's not necessarily hurting them to whiff on the recruiting trail as long as you can pick up what you need from the transfer portal. And I think they're making it. They've proved over the last couple of years that they can take guys from the portal, develop them, and improve their ability to get drafted. And so you have these guys like Jared Verse that are playing well. That I'm hoping that they come back next year. And if Jordan Travis is back next year, look out because I think he's a front runner for your Heisman.
I'm glad you brought up the transfer thing because looking at Michigan, man, that transfer, I don't know how to say his name, the center from Virginia.
Yes.
Bro, he should have been a 5-star on our blue chip ratio. Ohio State was afraid of him. He was doing those pulls and he was just crushing people. And I mean, it was insane. And then my boy Oki, right? I think he announced, it was kind of hinted on Twitter that he might be back next year because he said he's seen the development of what Michigan strength and conditioning does. And he would be excited to see what that would do for his draft stock next year. He got ripped off in the game. He clearly caused a fumble by Stroud. And then they reviewed it and said that it was forward progress. How does that even happen? And I was like, are you kidding me? They were like, yeah, the ball might not be out. There's no way on a sack that it's forward progress, right? How do you even make that call? The dude is getting thrown backwards and the ball goes flying out. Reward my guy. But they didn't want to do that to a transfer. So I'm glad that they're not giving him his due and no one's hyping him up for the draft. Maybe he'll be back next year. But that won't count for Michigan's talent though. Because he wasn't a 5-star transfer, right? They put it like a 3-star or something stupid.
Well, I mean, they don't even factor those stars in.
They started to. I'm telling you, I think Virginia's guy on Michigan's talent, I was looking to try to do a comparison because I think Ohio State, a lot of their 5-stars are wide receivers. And yeah, awesome. If you watch an NFL game, most likely you're going to see an Ohio State receiver. But the talent composite shouldn't reward them for only having a shit ton of 5-star wide receivers, right? Someone said that they had like 10 more 5-stars than Michigan. You can't play 10 wide receivers at the same time. And they weren't even throwing deep to them anyway. So any receiver, you could be a 3-star, you can catch a slant or a 5-yard out, right? Iowa does that all the time. That's their entire offense. Iowa's offense this year is basically Ohio State's offense with less talent. Write that down. If Ohio State, if they push Ryan Day out, they should hire Mike Leach, because the talent's there for Mike Leach to come in, put his wrinkles into that offense, and they would be unstoppable. And then if he doesn't recruit or whatever after that, he could just get fired like what's our guy from LSU? Won the national championship. I can't remember his name.
Ogeron.
Yeah, Ogeron. Mike Leach could do that at Ohio State. Take the talent they have, the personnel, a quarterback that can just not make mistakes, really. Because, I mean, honestly, his 2 interceptions were, and he could have had a couple more, but not really there. And I looked up, like you said about Florida State and Norvell. I don't mind Norvell's offense. And looking back, no one has ever won a championship with Ryan Day's offense. No one. They all either run the power spread like Urban Meyer and Clemson have done, or they run just a pro set, which is kind of like what Norvell's doing with like some of the quarterback runs. Hell, even Harbaugh's added in the quarterback runs. And they were like, oh, yeah, Ohio State doesn't know what to do with these quarterback runs. They're not used to Michigan doing that. It's like, yeah, he's been saving them. Why would he do quarterback runs against Illinois and get our guy murdered? Blake Corum already hurt his knee in that game. So go back through, look through the list, going back to even Tim Tebow running the power spread, which wasn't it funny seeing Michigan do that jump pass? The first thing I thought was, my boy Tebow would be so happy right now with that linebacker or whatever.
But I think with that, with the way that power spread works, like the way that Urban Meyer runs it, is he uses his quarterback on those runs that is an equalizer. When you use like the more pro style passer, like they're pushing Stroud as, and they're not using him in the run game, I think it hurts you.
Oh, it 100% hurts you. Even when Urban Meyer has won the national championship, Matt, who has his quarterback been? It's not been JT Barrett. It was Cardell Jones. He's basically DJ Uiagalelei, right? Uiagalelei, right? I didn't get his name right the first time. But that was it. Who was it? Joe Milton at Tennessee right now. I watched him play because he used to be at Michigan. He was another one that said he would love to score 100 on Michigan. For whatever reason, that must be the new saying after Ryan Day said it. But not that accurate. 50% passing. Hell, even the commentator said, oh, if Michigan throws for 50% completion, Ohio State's going to boat race them. Guess what? J.J. McCarthy, 12 for 24, Matt, 50% on Saturday. Doesn't matter if you're running the ball too, right? You can throw away. If you're taking deep shots and not hitting half of them, and 3 of them go for deep touchdowns, guess what? You're going to win.
And the thing that I like when I'm watching Norvell's offense is he runs a lot of guard tackle counter where he's pulling both the backside guard and tackle and having Benson run. And what's crazy is that Benson's getting so many yards after contact and breaking tackles down the field that it sets the play action aspect up of the offense really well, which they weren't able to do the last year or two because the offensive line was so bad. And now that they actually have some quality linemen in place, I mean, it's taken the offense to another level. And I think that the thing that really sets it apart is if you want to tee off on that run game because of the way the linemen pull, Jordan Travis is showing more comfort in pulling it, picking up those 7-8 yards at a clip, sliding, not getting hurt, not taking unnecessary hits, and moving the ball. And I think that's really, really helped Florida State this year. Because when in years past, if you're just standing back there and you just hand it off every time, it absolutely cripples the offense. I feel like with other quarterbacks, that was an issue that they had, that they were trying to get them into space and get them moving about, and the quarterbacks either were not pulling the ball or they didn't feel comfortable with those reads, and it really put them in a bad spot because the line wasn't holding blocks long enough to allow the quarterbacks to make the downfield throws, and it created that circle of suck where you find yourself in 3rd and 14, 3rd and 13, and the defenses were just teeing off on them.
And so let me ask you this, because like Florida State's been playing well. They're playing well going in. Right now, in my like playoff guess or whatever, they're right behind Washington at 10-2. Florida State's 9-3. Kansas State would get in ahead of them. They're 9-3. If TCU beats Kansas State and they have another loss in the expanded playoff, would you want Florida State to get that last spot and penalize Kansas State for playing in the championship game? Or would you say Kansas State should stay?
I would say I would want Florida State in for selfish reasons, but at the same time, if you're going to outline it, I think it's in what they deem the criteria of getting in. If they're saying you're locked in and conference championships don't matter, or that the results of conference championships don't matter, I'm okay with them saying that. But I know Florida State would be the team that would be left out, and then someone else from the Big Ten or SEC would be the one to jump in that scenario.
Well, there's a crazy thing where it goes by automatic bids, right? So if Michigan loses to Purdue, Purdue's not ranked. They might not get the automatic bid, right? So that means that the Big Ten would lose that spot. It might go to UCF at 22. So then you'd have Tulane. And I'm guessing UCF's in their championship because they're ranked. Maybe I'm wrong. But it would be, or is that who's even playing each other? But right now, let's just say, for example, they're in different divisions because I honestly don't know. So UCF, they win their conference. So they're in the same conference. So it would be Tulane. But whoever the next conference would be, whether it's Conference USA or whatever, their champion might get in over Purdue, which means Florida State or Kansas State would be eliminated based on that result. So there is an automatic bid component. It's just the top 6 champions are in, not all 10. Which to me, I'm fine with Michigan losing the bye. I've said it multiple times. I would rather have that all 10 conferences get an automatic bid. The NCAA steps in and says, we're locking it at 10 conferences. If NC State says, like, we don't like the way NILs are going, we're going to join the Sun Belt with Coastal Carolina and App State. Awesome. Right? And then maybe NC State could win that conference. But you can't just say, like, hey, we're going to take, like, Georgia State and Old Dominion, a bunch of crappy teams. We're going to start another conference to get an automatic ban. I think the NCAA had a perfect chance to say, we're stopping at 10. If a conference dissolves and it goes less, then we'll go to less. But we will never do more. 10 is the max. 6 automatic bids. You do 16 conference or 16-team playoff. Top seeds get the home games. I think all conference champions should get a home game, which would also benefit some of the smaller schools. Like, could you imagine, like, hey, an Oregon team playing at App State in the playoffs or something? Because, like, that could happen. So I think they should have just did 16. They're talking about how they're going to lose $400 million if it's not ready by 2024. Now, why not just expand it and go and make a little bit more money, right? Have the home games. Don't even do the conference championship week unless, like, it's doing an automatic bid for everybody. Because, like I said, right now with the way it's set up, it's a lose-lose for the top dogs. Hell, Georgia and Michigan, they could just rest their guys, right? Why wouldn't they? Purdue, they're not going to not let them in like a 12-team playoff. They're in no matter what. Blake Corum's banged up. Mike Morris is banged up. You don't want to get J.J. McCarthy hurt either. Let's just rest our guys. Let Purdue win the Big Ten because who gives a shit? And then screw Florida State or whoever else is sitting there on the way out, and Purdue gets in. And guess what? Because Purdue gets in, the Big Ten gets another stipend, right? Just like in basketball. However many teams make it into this new playoff, that conference gets another dollar amount. So now you have Purdue, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State in. Instead, it would have just been Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. So I think you're going to see a lot of messing around like that. Might not happen right away, but don't be surprised if like Georgia would just give up because they don't care. Like last year, they didn't win the conference championship and they won the national championship. Alabama did it a few years ago, right? If you're not penalizing teams for not even getting it, like Alabama this year, why are other conferences even caring? That's my thing with it. And the last thing I had for championship week, who is your predictions for this week?
For which games?
Just the big four, the playoff team. Do you think USC and TCU win?
I'm going to say that the main teams are going to win still. Like, I would be surprised if there's going to be upsets, because I think when you look at, like, Michigan wants a repeat, so I don't think they're going to look past Purdue. And the say, like, with Lincoln Riley coming close at Oklahoma, he has been to the playoffs and knows what it takes. That I think they're going to be fine, and the Big 12 has just been all over the place. I don't know that unless TCU really lays an egg, I don't see them losing either.
Well, Adrian Martinez got hurt. Is he still hurt? That was Kansas State's quarterback, and they were doing well. And then I don't know if he came back or not, to be honest. Like, that's the one thing. It's like, hey, I came back. He played in 9 games. So I'm guessing he's still out. And then TCU is going to beat him. Maybe I'm wrong and he is in. But like you said, Michigan, Harbaugh's whole thing is he wants to use this on recruiting. Going back to, I think there's a misconception. Because I looked it up the other day. I thought Ohio State had won more championships than they actually have. So since the Big Ten championship game has been implemented in 2011, it looks like, Ohio State has won 5 of them. All right? They've lost the 1 year to Michigan State. Wisconsin's won 2. Michigan State's won 2. Michigan and Penn State have both won 1. If Michigan wins on Friday, they have the second most conference championship wins in the Big Ten championship game format. Urban Meyer didn't win the conference until 2014, the year they crushed Wisconsin to win the Natty. Ryan Day took over, and he won 2, I think. One of them was the COVID year. So Urban Meyer won 3 in his, like, however many years was he there, 6 or 7? So he won it, like, about half the time. Harbaugh has won it only once. It could be 2. But if Michigan starts winning and Ohio State sees a drop-off, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Penn State or Michigan State won it yet again. Right? Take that out, and then if you're adding USC and UCLA, are you expecting a Michigan-Ohio State versus USC every year? Or are you getting rid of divisions? Because I wouldn't have been surprised if Michigan and Ohio State both crushed USC in the regular season this year. They've been playing great. So would it have just been Ohio State-Michigan again? And why have that game if it's going to be a rematch? The one thing that I did think that the Big Ten talked about during the COVID year, which was smart, was doing a championship weekend where you take your top, they try to do it with every team, but with the expanded playoff, take your top 8 teams, try to avoid rematches, and have them play. So maybe Michigan plays UCLA. Ohio State would play like whoever. I don't even know who else is good. Maybe Illinois because they didn't play them. Penn State might play USC. And then you have a chance to kind of give some of the other teams one more win. Like Ohio State would have a chance to beat Illinois to get that 12th win that they don't have currently. Right? Smart move. That's a real smart move. Michigan has a chance to beat 10 different Big Ten teams in the same season. The record is 9, I think. Illinois in 1983, I think, beat 9 or 8 different teams, and then Ohio State a couple years beat 9 and beat someone twice, based on a stat I saw on ESPN or something. So beat a bunch of different teams, get in the playoffs. I think that'd be great. I think the favorites all win, though. Do you have anything else for college football?
No.
All right, I had 2 more other topics just real quick. Let's see if I can find them. The United States taking it to Iran today, and able to move ahead out of the group stage in the World Cup. Now, they said that the United States has won in the group stage like 3 of the past 4 World Cups that they were in. They weren't in the last one. It's a young team. That's why I'm going to do an extra show. On Friday, they play Netherlands. Or no, Saturday. Is it Saturday? It's coming up one of the days, so we'll probably do one after. But I think they have a chance. I don't like some of the injuries and things that they've been doing. I know Pulisic's in the hospital. He's been hurt. But the United States has been attacking. They don't try to shoot the ball. They shoot over the net a ton of times. I think they try to get too fancy. When I see some of the other teams, like, do you think Ronaldo's looking to pass it one more time? No. He's going to score the ball, or at least try to score every time. I don't think the United States has a guy with that killer instinct yet. I don't think Pulisic has it. To me, you know who he reminds me of? LeBron. A lot of complaining to the refs, a lot of falling down, always making that extra pass. And it's like, buddy, you're supposed to be the best guy on the team. Why are you passing to Ray Allen? Just shoot the ball, buddy. Shoot it. Why you blaming it on Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh for missing a shot? You're the guy. You are the guy. Pulisic, you're the guy. You scored the goal today. And you got injured kicking it. And I hate to see you injured, but you need to have that killer instinct more. A lot of times, I think it was Wales, where he's trying to make the extra pass. And, okay, great. How many times did it work? Basically 0 times. Basically 0 times it's worked. Even some of the other guys, I think it's rubbing off where, I forget who it was, but he came down and passed it across instead of just taking a shot. You take a shot and you get a rebound, it's as good as a pass, just like in hockey. Maybe I'm used to hockey like power plays or something where, hey, if you get the advantage, you're going to try to get the puck on net. Soccer, I think they should do the same if they're the United States. It seems like they have the speed and the talent. They just don't have the killer instinct. So, what do you think? You think they have a chance to beat Netherlands?
I'm going to say no. Just because every time I get my hopes up, they don't win.
Well,
and
I've been keeping this.
Today I was watching the tail end of the World Cup game.
And almost blew it.
And I was trying to explain to my son who we wanted to win. And he goes, I don't care. He walked away.
I'll say that they almost blew it at the end, and I thought this is going to be so United States, where the team flop tried to get a penalty, which wasn't even a penalty. And maybe I'm burnt by so many bad calls in the Ohio State games where, like, JT looked like he's short and they gave him a first down, that I thought the United States was definitely going to get penalized. But they pull it out, and they weren't even celebrating. Only the one guy that looked like Steve-O out there was happy, because I think he knew that they won. The rest of the guys thought that they were going to call another penalty, I think. So I want to see them win. I like a lot of college football stuff. The United States is ranked 16th right now. They're playing number 8 Netherlands. Just like the college football playoffs, like I said, 8 and 16, it can be done. So hopefully they pull it off. All right, let's see. That was the United States advancing. I had something else to tell you that I forgot, but I'll see if I can bring it up. Let's go ahead and get into the NFL. I only have one topic this week. Is Jordan Love going to take over as the franchise quarterback for the Packers, Matt? What do you think?
Yes.
Did you watch the game?
There's absolutely nothing that's holding them back at this point. They're behind so many games that why would you not just try to evaluate what's on the roster so that going into the offseason you know what kind of free agents you need to target.
It looks like Aaron Rodgers has no control of the team. He looks bad. I know he's hurt, I think a lot of the off season stuff, like off the field, where he doesn't train with the guys, where he's like not going to camp, fighting for more money, and then complaining about his cast, saying that the guys are just messing up, right? But yet he doesn't work with them. I think that's rubbing the team the wrong way. It's almost like the guy that comes in as a superstar. He gets hurt. They said he's going to play this week. Just bench him. They look so much better with Love. Even I have the stats up here. Love had a QBR of 94.2. He was 6 for 9, had 113 yards and a touchdown. If they would have got him the ball back, I had a feeling they were going to go to overtime. Aaron Rodgers in there had no chance. He's 2 interceptions. He took 3 sacks because he holds onto the ball too long. His QBR was 38.3. He threw for 140 yards. Jordan Love almost threw for more yards than him in half as many attempts. And they knew Jordan Love was passing. Maybe it was the bend but don't break defense, right? I don't know. Maybe the next week Jordan Love looks like garbage, but he was getting the ball out quick. His players were making plays, right? I don't see that with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe the game's past him. Maybe the guys just don't like him. I don't know, but I don't get a good vibe from him. And the team looked pumped when Love went in. And I've seen that happen. When the team gets lifted up, when the backup comes in, you need to be worried about your job. So that's my thing. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Michigan last year with Cade McNamara, right? The guy
who hit the portal.
Yeah, he hit the portal. And I'm telling you, if he goes to like a team like Iowa, look out, because he's good. He's good at passing the ball. I think the way that maybe some of his leadership, I don't want to knock him, but it looked different when JJ came in the game. I felt the same way when it was it Shea Patterson, where there are rumors about like some locker room rifts, and when McCaffrey came in. McCaffrey comes in, looks like there's a spark. Unfortunately, he breaks his collarbone. Right? I didn't think Shea was going to play another game. I saw the same spark when JJ came in. Hell, go back and watch the playoff game. Georgia shut that down. Cade's not going to run on you. Hell, Cade might be perfect at Ohio State. If he transferred to Ohio State, I wouldn't even bat an eye. I would think, oh, damn it. Like, great, that's just what they need, another passer, that makes smart decisions like C.J. Stroud, right? They don't need another guy. Embarrassment of riches. But J.J. adds the other element. Jordan Love, if he's going to be able to move the ball and not hold it, not take sacks, make smart decisions, he can be that guy. And I honestly felt good about him in there. And honestly, beforehand, I didn't. I was worried that it was going to be a Trey Lance situation, right? Guy comes in, holding the ball, not really doing anything, and the team looks like crap. He gets injured, and now the 49ers are like one of the favorites. So, I don't know. But, Cade transferring was one of the things I was going to mention. Same with, is he end up at Miami? A lot of Michigan's guys are going to Miami these days, it seems. Like, that's just, the minor league team for Michigan. Josh Gaddis goes out there. Let's get rid of some other guys. They all go to Miami, and then they lose to Pitt by 20. And their stadium was so empty. Did you see that comment someone made? Bet Pitt, they're used to playing in front of an empty stadium. Just made me crack up. And then they won by so big. I'm like, maybe that guy's onto something.
Well, the funny thing was that they said about Pitt put out the graphic that their average home attendance was 7,000 more than West Virginia. Not that they're counting or anything.
Well, West Virginia's been bad too. We already hit my last topic. We might as well go to the final bell. Let's talk about coaching changes. I knew I was going to go too long on Michigan and Ohio State, so maybe we'll do a coach. I figure there are going to be some more coaching changes, right? So we can hit on some next week or so. But right now, you freeze Liberty. Does that crater the Liberty program?
What's that?
Does you freeze leaving Liberty crater their program?
No. Because the same reasons that I said he should stay are the same reasons that the next coach coming in makes it an appealing job. The fact that they have the facilities look outstanding. they have a lot of endowment money that they can potentially put toward additional things for that the football program would need. I think with being a newer program, I think there is some room to build for the right person to come in. And I think that there's a lot of positives going into it that I think even within the conference, they're showing the ability to win consistently. They've been to bowl games the last couple of years. Like, the foundation is set for the right person to come in and still maintain a high level of success.
And I brought that up because we talked about West Virginia. Do you think West Virginia has an appeal? I know they're independent, right? So, like, do you think they could out recruit a coach compared to like a team like West Virginia?
I don't know for sure. I mean, I would think that there's stuff, yes, but I think there's also the negative recruiting when you throw Falwell under the bus and some of the stuff that Hugh Freeze has done. I think there's people that can negatively recruit that really well, and it pushes people away. Plus, when you look at Liberty being a Christian university, I think that religious aspect pushes some people away as well.
Well, I was watching, I think it was Cincinnati game, and they talked about how they had this transfer from BYU, and I thought the announcer said, there he is on the field with him and his 10 kids, and I was like, are you kidding me? How old is this dude? But he only had 2 kids. But I would almost believe it, because I'm like, they take their like mission trip or whatever, and then if he would have had 10, because there was a ton of people with them, and I actually went back and looked it up on YouTube, but I guess the other ones were his siblings, because he has like 5 siblings. But I was like, oh my god, how old is this guy that he has 10 kids that look like super old? But I wouldn't even have batted an eye. But I think Liberty, back to them compared to like BYU, I almost had, maybe I'll bring this up because I think I have it in my back burner, like, is adding BYU to the Big 12 a mistake? And then why not like backfill with Liberty next? Because you want the Big 12. We'll hit some more on them in the offseason, but like Cincinnati's coming in. My boy Urban is right there, Matt, for the taking. He was excited after that Michigan win. They were chanting, "We want Urban" in the background. I went back and watched it because I was like, Urban was the only guy on Fox that actually seemed happy Michigan won. They were chanting, "We want Urban." Of course he's happy. So he goes to Cincinnati because Ohio State doesn't want him back, right? He's right in their backyard. He's in the Big 12 now. Who's going to stop him? No one. Oklahoma and Texas are gone, right? He can instantly recruit the best in that conference. He comes in and starts winning. Why not, while these other conferences are expanding, if the Big Ten's grabbing Oregon and Washington, why doesn't the Big 12 grab Liberty and some of these other up-and-coming programs and say, like, look, we don't have Pitt or whatever. We have West Virginia versus Cincinnati versus Liberty versus App State or something. Like, try to get, I mean, they're bringing in UCF, right? Maybe bring in East Carolina or something and try to get some of these. East Carolina probably wouldn't be a good get anymore, but try to get big programs that are going to invest. Like, I think Liberty's going to invest. App State feels like they're going to invest. Maybe Charlotte feels like they're going to invest. Right? Like, I think that they should just go and try to get some more programs and maybe not try to match the quality, but at least try to match the size of the Big Ten or SEC. Because right now I think they're going to 12. I think Liberty would be a hell of a catch. And if they were in the Big 12 and try to bring some solid recruiting to that conference. You already have BYU, so you can't be against the religious affiliations. You already have TCU, right, and Baylor. Those are all religious schools. Why not become a religious type smaller conference? Because then, who knows, Wake Forest might be up for grabs. Boston College might be up for grabs. And then you could stay in like a Power 4 if it actually turns that way. I think that's a path for Liberty to grow and for the Big 12 to stay relevant. right? You have a bunch of schools that have churches behind them in the NIL era, right? Perfect. That was my only thought as I was thinking through this the other day. Like, why is he going to Auburn? Auburn sucks. That's an awful job. I mean, they rumored that when Lane Kiffin turned it down, then they were like, should we bring back James Franklin? And I was like, why would Franklin leave? They could be the favorites next year in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten's making so much more money that who knows, they could just start throwing at recruits, right? Why'd he go to Auburn? And of course, he probably turned them down because then they were like, well, we picked Hugh Freeze not because everyone turned us down, but because he's the best fit. I'm like, come on. But I thought Liberty should go after Art Briles. How come he's the only coach that doesn't get forgiven? Right?
I think because just the mere mention of his name causes people to absolutely lose their mind.
You don't think Urban Meyer will have that same when Cincinnati hires him?
I think for that reason, he won't go to Cincinnati.
Why? He's an alum. Matt, if Cincinnati decides that, hey, they've played dirty in the past in basketball, if they decide, like, hey, we're going to pay, and we made the playoffs once, we're going to bring in Urban, and we're going to be the bad guy. Because who's the bad guy in college football right now? There's usually a bad guy that people don't like, a bad team. They talked about it during the USC game. They said, is USC going to be the bad guy in this year's playoffs because they're all transfers, right? Pitt fans are mad that they took Addison. Oklahoma's mad that they stole basically their entire team, right? Are they the bad guy? Cincinnati with Urban would be the bad guy. And I would love it. They need a heel, man. They need Razor Ramon to come out. That's what oh man, I would be so pumped because I've been saying for a while too, it's not fair for Michigan that Michigan State's in the same state recruiting against them. Ohio State has no one recruiting against them really. Cincinnati coming to the Big 12 and Michigan now taking recruits. Did you see after the game, people that were on their official visit to Ohio State were celebrating with Michigan on the field and then committed to them after? How cool is that? Embarrassing. So Cincinnati would be big for Michigan. People are like, well, what if they started stealing recruits that Michigan would get? Not a big deal. Because Ohio State, if they start losing every recruit in the state, I don't care if you're pulling 5 stars from California or whatever, like hired guns, your team's not going to be that dedicated or that tough, right, to win the Big Ten anymore. I mean, we kind of already see it now. So that's my last thing. We'll talk about some of the other coaches' changes. Matt Rule coming in, Luke Fickell. Why the hell did Luke Fickell choose Wisconsin over reportedly USC, Notre Dame, Nebraska? Hell, was he waiting for Ohio State or Michigan? Would he even have taken the Michigan gig last year if Harbaugh went to the NFL? Would he have been offered? I don't know. I think Wisconsin's like a weird consolation prize for him. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You have anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for listening. Like I said, I got the longer show for free this week just because I was so pumped that Michigan won again and in such dominating fashion. Very perfect. I mean, like Matt even said, when a rivalry game, you never know how close it's going to be. Ohio State played themselves out of the playoff pretty much with a 22-point loss. And if Michigan can get it done against Purdue, 2 championships, it only takes 3 more, and then they tie Ohio State, right? So just keep the train rolling, and we will see you next week.